So everybody, thank you very much for joining our Hill Venture Lab podcast. Here we have Dr. Ogan Gurel, who I've known for I guess the last more than 5 6 years, who used to be based
Yeah,
in Korea, but he's a physician trained at Harvard and has a very interesting career, and now living in Texas. Dr. Gurel, good to have you here. Yeah.
yeah, likewise. Great to see you again, although we kept in touch recently as well. But I think almost a decade we've known each other, certainly before the pandemic.
Yes, yes. I remember seeing you back in Hangyo.
Pangyo, yes, just outside of Seoul.
Yes, yes. Hey, so Dr. Oken, so I mean, you have a very interesting background. You've started your career as a physician and have got into industry. You've been leading medical innovation in Korea. I know you've been traveling to Singapore and also being active in other parts of Asia, and then going to the US. So maybe we can start by maybe sharing a little bit about your background, how you came to be, and then after that we'll go into MiniMD as well as maybe like topics about innovation in Asia and the US. Yeah.
Sure. So thanks a lot for having me, Dr. Park. Always a pleasure to see you. Always a pleasure to share ideas. And in terms of my background, as you pointed out, I span both medicine. I have an MD from Columbia University, but also basic science, structural biology, bioinformatics. I did my undergraduate at Harvard and got my senior honors thesis. I worked my research when I was at Harvard was with Martin Karplus, who eventually got the Nobel Prize in 2013. And he was a pioneer in molecular dynamics, which is a centerpiece of structural biology. So I've been pretty much involved in the scientific world as well, obviously, since then. And then, as you pointed out, in the business world. So I spent 12 years in Korea, half of that, about 5.5 years with Samsung at Central Corporate Research Lab in Seoul, in the CTO office, Healthcare Innovation Strategy, and the other half in academia as teaching at a number of universities as well as with startups. And then I also have the consulting side. So, as you mentioned, I've been around the block. One interesting story is when I was graduating from Harvard, Derek Bach, the president of Harvard, gave the baccalaureate address, which is the day before the actual graduation. And the baccalaureate address, he talked to the undergraduates. And I find those addresses a little more personal than sometimes the commencement addresses, which are highly formulaic and all that. And I remember very distinctly he saying, "You're graduating, you should go international, go and help out, not just in America or Boston, but throughout the world." And I really took that to heart. I worked in France and Germany, as well as you pointed out, in Seoul. When I was in Seoul, I think I traveled to Singapore over those 12 years, 36 times.
Oh, wow.
And then, uh, yeah, and then other places in Asia as well, Australia, New Zealand, China, and where else? Vietnam. Uh, and so I really took that advice to heart. And so, in addition to the sector and domain areas that I've been, which have been fairly diverse, I've also been fairly geographically diverse as well. And I appreciate that.
Hey, thank you. I mean, you have a very international background. I mean, like not just Korea, but you've also worked in. You said you've also worked in Europe, right? How did
Yes.
Korean? So how did it start? Like, I know that you did your MD and also you did a training. How did it go about until I met you in Korea? Like, what kind of things happened, in your life? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was at Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a major consultancy, and worked on healthcare projects, pharmaceuticals, medical device, health insurance, and so forth. And then had my own consultancy, also advising pharma, medtech, market entry, strategy, and all that. And I had a blog as well, or I should be more precise. I was contributing to a newsletter on medical technologies and so forth. And I guess the word got around that Samsung was recruiting to really build up their healthcare practice. So, to make a long story short, interviewed, visited, gave a talk at the research center, and they brought me on as a director in the CTO office, and that's how I came to Asia. I had traveled obviously as a child before, once to Japan with my parents, but it was really my first time in Asia significantly, and we made it our home for 12 years. And that's what brought me to Samsung. This was in 2010, and their chairman at that time, Lee Gun-hee, 회장님, that's the Korean for chairman.
Yes, yes.
I learned Korean during that time, but he was really aggressive about expanding Samsung, very forward thinking into healthcare. And in CTO office, we had all sorts of projects. I should say in the research lab, we had all sorts of projects from obviously the digital healthcare, which seems obvious, but we had the microRNAs, exosomes, next generation sequencing,
Oh, wow.
bioinformatics, image analysis, robotics, surgical robotics. I can't even remember all of them, but there were many projects. It was quite a remarkable environment, even though, we're a semiconductor company. And even wrote a few patents in collaboration with some of the staff there, bringing my biomedical hat in their engineering, and we came up with some innovative ideas for robotics and image analysis.
I mean, that was more than 10 years ago. And that's actually what we've seen, right? I mean, biologics, the next-gen sequencing, next-gen sequencing already has become more like widespread in many parts of
Yes, of
India,
course.
right? As you know. And of course, robotics. I mean, there are a lot of interesting robotics companies from China. So, I mean, just to have that kind of I mean, that knowledge about what's happening at the time. I mean, at the time, most people probably didn't know that, but you were like,
Well, yeah, we were at the cutting edge because, quite frankly, our job, my job, and those who are with me, our job was to map out the future and to some extent even create that future. That was
Mhm.
our job. One of our tasks, as it were, when you work in a CTO office, is technology sensing, which literally means, sensing what's out there, what's around the corner, what's up on the Gartner hype cycle, which is coming down. So I would analyze all these technologies in depth and develop these reports that would guide the senior management. When I meant senior management, the CTO office was really embedded in the top office. I mean, we were not the headquarters of the whole company, obviously, but we were reporting to them effectively. And technology sensing was a very important part of that. And we also had open innovation initiatives, which I was very closely involved in, given my global background and other connections. And open innovation, as you know, is basically the concept that you don't do all the innovation in-house. You collaborate with outside parties, share revenues, spin out companies, etc. Which, to be quite frank, Samsung, like Amazon and some other tech companies, can be quite secretive.
yeah.
Open innovation is kind of the opposite of secretiveness, but we were balancing that, and it was quite fascinating. And um, I would travel a lot to Europe and the United States to engage with those open innovation partners. So technology sensing and the open innovation was kind of a way to be on top of these cutting edge topics. So you're right, next generation sequencing, surgical robotics is now more commonplace, but back then we were on the edge. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you probably you had like you kind of saw what was going to happen for next 10 years in that role,
That's right. That's right.
and you've also seen
Yeah,
how.
I mean, we
Yeah,
were also involved in AI,
wow.
and this is early on. One of the papers I wrote with the staff there was in AI-based visual processing, and that's actually an interesting story because they are really expert in AI, the deep learning, neural networks, and so forth. And I understood how the eye works from a physiologic anatomic perspective. And as most of your listeners know, when you have a camera, you have pixels, and then that's sent to the CPU, central processing unit, the microprocessor, whatever, to be processed. But the human eye doesn't work that way. The retina itself is a kind of computer
Mm.
with those ganglion cells and horizontal cells and amacrine cells, as bring back memories. So
Yeah.
all those cells, which is the bane of medical students to memorize all of them, but they actually form a computational network. They pre-process the images. So they detect movement, they detect edges, and what is sent to the brain, the occipital cortex, which is analogous to the CPU, is not the pixels. It
Mm.
is a pre-processed uh, convolution, if you will, of movement and edges. That's what sent to the occipital cortex. And so we developed a paper. It was fairly high profile in the AI literature at that time, where by doing the pre-processing, we were able to reduce the number of levels of deep learning and accelerate by a matter of 2 orders of magnitude the processing of images.
Wow.
And also required less training, less learning. Uh, so that was quite exciting.
I mean, just to have that kind of a like a exposure. I mean, at that time. I mean, now the AI with the visual, I guess, processing is, like kind of a part of our daily life, right? But back then, I mean, this
Yeah.
was not like, I mean, this was
I
not.
mean, to be frank, I don't actually know, but maybe some of those ideas are actually being used now. I mean, I didn't keep up in the field necessarily. I mean, I keep up with AI, especially on the clinical side, but not image processing. As I said, I was not an expert. I just was a simple-minded doctor, but I contributed that insight, and we made a very good partnership.
You've been in Korea, but also you've also spent time in different countries, right? This will be a bit kind of like a high level view, but how have you seen the Asian innovation ecosystems evolve? How was it before when you first came to Korea? And of course, other Asian countries. What have you seen? And what have you seen, I guess, by the time you left? I mean, you've been there for a decade. So what kind of a changes have you seen in Asia? Yeah.
Well, I think the operative term that's critical to consider is the word innovation.
Hmm.
You ask a very broad question.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's everything from culture to manufacturing capability to academic support to infrastructure. All these sorts of things feed into it. And we have limited time. So I think that the key term is innovation.
Hmm.
Obviously, that too is very broad. But what I mean to say is, how does the innovation in Asia compare to, say, other areas?
Hmm.
And that was very interesting to me because when I was at Samsung for those 5 years, we were immersed in innovation in the sense of what it is, how to improve it. And the chairman would always say, we have to be more innovative, and Samsung has to be innovative. We're competing with Sony and now, Apple, and we have to be innovative. And what's interesting from a very personal slash professional perspective for me is I was really immersed in that and asking the question, what is innovation? To make a long story short, when the second half of my time in Korea, when I was in academia, I taught innovation. So
Hmm.
basically, an overview of innovation, did some academic research in innovation and continued to do that. So I was a student, as they say, of innovation. And this is very interesting because they often say, well, the United States is the innovation hub, in
Hmm.
particular, say, Silicon Valley. And in Asia, they often say, and of course, I'm generalizing, but we're fast followers. The Hong Kong model in the 1960s, then Japan, and then Korea. they follow the innovation and just do it better. Sony televisions, Samsung smartphones, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people, companies in Asia would say, well, we're not really innovative, but we're the fast followers. And I don't want to mean that to be bad or pejorative. You can be very successful. In fact, one could say arguably the most successful. You don't always want to be first to market and things like that. But what's interesting to me is I think that the level of innovation in Asia is underestimated. What I mean to say is what Samsung was particularly innovative about was process innovation. So there's various types of innovation. There's product innovation, process innovation, there's open innovation, closed innovation, there's disruptive innovation, there's incremental innovation. As I said, I taught this, so there's all these different dimensions of innovation, and I don't want to give a lecture to your audience, but a lot of people confuse innovation as being just product innovation, a device. Oh, we invented the iPhone, and then we come with the Samsung Galaxy right after. We're the fast followers. We're not innovative. Well, what Samsung was very good at and continues to be good at, and other Asian companies, is process innovation. And of course, here in America, we talk about, and we teach this in our innovation classes, Henry Ford and the assembly line. That was not a device or product innovation. That was a process innovation, which revolutionized the world. And Asia does that very well, the process innovation. They do other innovation too, but I just wanted to highlight that I would not say Asia is not innovative, or I should say less innovative. But sometimes people say that because they don't necessarily come out with the products first, but they are fundamentally very innovative. And when I teach innovation, I think that the most successful companies, the most successful individuals are those that combine the best of many worlds. So if you combine product innovation with process innovation, that's a real winner. In other words, you don't have to be innovative everywhere all the time, because there's a very, very fine line between being innovative and being crazy. We talk about that with artists and et cetera, right? So if you're just purely innovative in all the respects, then that may not be such a good thing. You have to have that balance. And I think you combine the strengths of different areas. So global collaboration is very important. Global engagement is very important. As a student of innovation, I think that drives value.
Do you think there's still?
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank
That
you.
was a long
No, no,
answer
no, no,
to.
but it's very it is philosophical, but it's still relevant today, right? Because
Oh yeah, of course.
Korea, of course, like Taiwan, Japan, China, we see a lot of interesting things coming. But if you go to other parts of Asia, they still, I guess, trying to, I guess, like progress. So I'm wondering, is the process innovations, is it going to be good? Because I think a lot of our Asian economies made their way because of the process innovation, as you said. Maybe there's some
Which is very important, right? Yeah.
important, but how would it? Does this formula? Do you think this formula would still be relevant in this current age with this age of AI? Nowadays it's a lot easier to improve process and kind of manage, and I guess track things, with the different tools, right? So do you think? Let's say we try to look at other Asian economies. Do you think the process innovation is going to be enough? Like, what kind of? Do you think it's just still the same formula that will work for them?
Um, yes, I think process innovation is not going to go away, and I'll tell you a little secret. There's a lot of focus on product innovation, and I'll tell you the story that I teach in my class. I don't think it's taught a lot in business school cases, but I teach it in my class because I think it's extremely informative. Who do you think invented the MP3 player? We're talking 20, 25 years ago. The MP3 player.
My guess is probably wrong, but maybe Japan.
Yeah, there was some small players, but I don't know, some of your listeners might recognize this name, the Rio.
Mm.
The Rio from quarter century ago, the early 2000s, was basically a Korean company, Seihan.
Oh,
And
okay.
I
Wow.
remember, yeah, so I remember getting the first MP3 player as a gift from Booz Allen, a sign-on gift. You show up for orientation and they passed out this MP3 player, and it was the Rio. And it was kind of like a big rage. I mean, people were not buying millions of it, but it was in the press and it was like a something new, whatever. And I have a background in computer science. I had done computer science research in high school and college at a fairly high level. And I continue to do some computer science, obviously. But I remember I couldn't figure out how to use it. You know, I, I didn't know how to put the music on. And at that time, some of your audience may know Napster, and it was
Yes.
illegal, all this kind of stuff. It was just like, I don't know. I mean, it ended up being a piece of electronic junk,
Mm.
even though it worked. I think I got one song to work, and I was like happy, but it was too much of effort.
Mm.
And most people equate MP3 players with the iPod.
Right.
That became, and we call that in the innovation literature, the dominant design. So
Mm.
Apple followed the Koreans,
Mm.
but and often everybody says, well, the iPod was very elegant design and a good user interface. That is not really why it took off. The reason it took off was business model innovation.
Mm.
And even though the iPod device did have benefits over the Rio, there were less buttons and all this. It was, more simple minded and easy to use, which is extremely important, as everybody knows. But Steve Jobs combined the iPod with iTunes, which was the store. You paid 99 cents, if you remember, for a song. And you didn't have to worry about everything. You just signed on the website and it automatically synced and whatever it took, it was just seamless, easy. With the Rio, you didn't have to pay for the songs. With the iPod, you paid for the songs, but people would rather pay for the songs because it was so much easier and more legal than not pay for the songs and not figure it out. So,
Right.
what I mean to say is that the business model innovation is what distinguished that particular uh, phenomena with Apple. And
Mm.
business model innovation is a form of process innovation. So I would argue that that's going to continue to be important, if not more important. So, for example, with AI, everybody has the algorithms. Everyone's producing a model. Everyone's producing a LLM, etc. I mean, the guy in a garage is doing it. But who's going to be able to dominate the market will be those who have the data centers and the infrastructure and the logistics to deliver that. That's process innovation.
Mm.
The product is dead. I mean, not dead in the sense, it's just in terms of that doesn't matter anymore. I mean, there are on the edges, okay, Claude is a little bit better for code and whatnot. But ultimately, it's going to be the process innovation that will determine the winners. That's my
That,
feeling.
that's a very interesting take. I mean, like I was initially thinking actually the opposite, but then now I think
No,
you're.
well, that's right.
Wow.
I mean, that's
Wow.
that's right. And a lot of people at Samsung were thinking, well, we have to develop new products to be innovative. And one of the things I was arguing is, yeah, of course that's important, but maybe actually not important. And you are more innovative than you think you are.
Wow. Wow.
Process innovation,
That's
business
interesting.
model innovation. Yeah.
I want to come back to this later. I want to also hear like what you see in the US now. You with your teaching in Dallas with the students, and
Yes.
maybe but bring back this theme. But I also want to go into your mini MD, right? I mean, you obviously like
Mm.
being at the forefront of innovation for corporates. You've also looked at how different countries, I guess, like how they're doing their innovation, the ecosystems, and you've also been in the academia teaching with the students, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you come up? Like when I first met you, it was about MiniMD, right? How did that come about?
Well, the mini MBA is an interesting story. I mentioned to you that I joined Booz Allen Hamilton.
Mm,
They had what was called the Experienced Hire Program.
mm,
And most of these consultancies, McKinsey, BCG, Booz Allen, they hire MBAs.
mm,
And uh, all of them, this is around the early 2000s, they decided, well, we want to diversify, we want to get more expertise. We will hire PhDs and MDs, not
mm,
exclusively, but a small group, and we call them experienced hires. And so I was brought to Booz Allen Hamilton as part of that. And because we were not MBAs, they put us all through a mini MBA program. And
oh,
many of your listeners may have heard about mini MBA programs. They're actually fairly common. You
mm,
know, MBA is 2 years, a mini MBA would be 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever.
mm.
So ours was 2 weeks mini MBA program. So I have a certificate, that sort of thing. And I learned about finance, marketing, accounting, strategy, things like that. And fast forward several years later, not many, several years later, when I arrived at Samsung, I was in the CTO office, and it's embedded in the central corporate research lab called Samsung Advanced Institute of Technology, or Samsung Chonggap-Kisilwon. That's the Korean name. And um, even though some of the CTO staff were business oriented,
Mm,
most of it was engineers, and certainly none of them were medically trained. And we were going aggressively into healthcare. So it struck me that these are really smart people, the creme de la creme, the top of Korean, you are top in your class and you go to Samsung. So these are very smart people, but they know nothing about medicine.
mm,
And medicine was a black box.
mm,
And I felt, well, let me create an internal course,
mm,
just like I had the mini MBA called the mini MD.
mm.
And this is in 2011. So I created an internal course, and as we had our own internal training programs coordinated by HR, and I offered the mini MD for the first time. And it was kind of an overview of all the topics in medical school and so forth. And it evolved since then. When I left Samsung, I had been teaching at Samsung, but also at the Sungkyung Kwan University, which is affiliated with Samsung. So I was teaching their biomedical scientists, or I should say their trainees. So it was already outside of Samsung per se by the time I left Samsung, and that was for a 4 credit course. And then I left and I started to teach on my own. Um, and I always do partnerships with organizations, and that's a lot of them were in Singapore. There's
Mm.
ESSEC Business School in
Yeah.
Singapore, and I taught several incarnations of that at ESSEC, and also at in Australia, in New Zealand, in Italy, often in collaboration with the university or other organization. And just like yourself, we collaborated with the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce, and we delivered it during the pandemic
Yeah.
online. So during the pandemic, I converted to an online course, of course. And then here in Texas, it's a long story, so I'll keep it short. But also teaching it at the University of Texas at Arlington as a 4 credit course. And now
Mm.
it's available at the University of Texas at Arlington as a certificated online course in a sophisticated learning management system with about 2,400 slides, about 45 hours of video, 386 certification questions, and about 4,800 quiz questions. So it's basically medical school in this semester.
You turned the internal course for a company when you were working for Samsung that you created out of need. and then just really like brought this really alive and bringing this to different organizations. And also, I remember, like you were going to different, I guess, places on your own, and like bringing this. I mean, it's really entrepreneurial to like put this together, and it's still, I guess, it's still like very needed. I mean, this could be
Yeah.
applicable in companies even today. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
of course. I mean,
not more. Yeah.
yeah, the concept is there are many benefits to it, if you will, even on a personal basis. Um,
Mm,
I've had students, participants who just by taking the course, they were able to engage with the doctors and figure out their medical situations more clearly on a personal basis. But on a professional basis, the concept is everyone is familiar with the term translational medicine, bench to bedside.
mm,
And there's a lot that goes into that. How do we make that translation from research to clinical benefit? And people talk about financing, they talk about infrastructure, they talk about manufacturing, distribution, all of these enter into it. But fundamentally, it is about bringing the world of science into the reality of clinical practice. And that's a translation problem. And literally, that's a language challenge. And the MiniMD, because I've offered it at Johnson and Johnson, I've offered it for many health insurance companies, I've offered it, as I mentioned, to biomedical scientists in an academic setting, is a key part of that translation. Most people don't think of that as being important, but allowing executives, managers, scientists to talk and engage and understand doctors, clinicians, nurses, and how their world works
mm,
is extremely important in translational medicine. So, in other words, I view this mini MD or Essentials of Medicine course as a quick way of facilitating that language communication between these two groups.
mm. And
And that's important. Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, that's an important component, often underestimated or overlooked in translational medicine.
Who, if you kind of a group, different organizations who try to get this, who were the typical, I guess, profiles, and what were some of the feedbacks?
Well, I've taught it in a public setting. When I mean public, I mean it wasn't corporate in-house.
Mm,
And I've had a wide range of people from healthcare lawyers to healthcare consultants to medical device
mm,
executives slash managers to pharma executives slash managers to biomedical scientists. And as I mentioned, also health insurance. Um, it is really also government policy on the
mm,
healthcare side.
mm,
It is really cuts across any kind of healthcare professional who's not necessarily clinically trained, but intersects strongly with the clinical world.
mm.
Hospital administrators. So the whole gamut, the whole spectrum.
I mean, this could also be relevant for medical schools. I mean,
Well,
kind of,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So one of the concepts that I'd like to do, but it's easier said than done because medical education is quite conservative and traditional in many ways,
Mm,
is to bring a version of this course to medical schools, either directly or indirectly as an offering to medical students. And they say, well, I want to get a whole bird's eye view of all of medicine before I start or before I take the boards. And this is my opportunity to do that. Because in reality, you've been trained in American medical schools, but it's also a global phenomenon. And many of what I say will resonate with many doctors in the audience. Medical school education is highly fragmented.
mm,
I'm not saying it's bad, but because you may get a cardiology lecture from a world-class cardiologist, and then your anatomy lecture from a top anatomist, but they don't communicate, they don't kind of integrate. There's no, and it's stretched out over 2, 3 years, etc. it's highly fragmented. And a holistic, integrated view of medicine, which is, of course, the Holy Grail, is the desired summum bonum good of medical education. You know, a good doctor thinks of the whole patient. That's indeed the goal. But that being said, is very hard to achieve. So fragmented education, in my view, leads to fragmented care. So I do think that a overarching kind of quick, essentialized introduction, overview, I should be more precise, of medicine will make better doctors. So
I do want
yes,
to,
it'll be
I do, yeah. I don't want to bring this concept to school sometime. I think, I mean, because even when I did medicine, I mean, there was no, I guess, I mean, nobody gave us this kind of like overview course in the beginning. So you just kind of take subjects as they come, right?
yeah. You take the subjects, and yeah, exactly what I said. So that's the way it is, and it's not like it produces bad doctors. That's obviously great education, but like anything, I have an innovation mindset. I teach innovation. Innovation is about improvement. We may be the best, but can we be better? Let's put it that way.
Going back to process innovation.
Yeah, exactly. The process of medical education, right? So, and another important concept, and I don't want to spend too much time because it's an area of research interest of mine, is the concept of medical literacy as
Hmm.
distinct from health literacy. I'm in the process of developing the MiniMD for the general public,
Hmm.
not for pharma execs or med tech execs or for medical schools, but
Hmm.
for general people. Remember, I mentioned about it being personally beneficial.
Hmm.
And there's some research supporting this, which we can talk at another time. But instead of 45-hour course, maybe a 5-hour real essentialized how doctors think, how
Hmm.
diagnosis works. What are the different types of treatment, the medical versus surgical divide? What does that mean? For you and me as doctors, this may seem very basic, but for the general public, I think it'll be very important and beneficial because in reality, even though we talk about evidence-based medicine and guidelines and says you have to do this because that's what the evidence says, in reality, about 40% of care is what we would call preference sensitive care,
Hmm.
where the biological treatment effect, and I've been publishing research in this area, and with actual statistics. Again, I don't want to go into the details necessarily, but the biological treatment effects, say between surgery and non-surgery, are the differences between them are very minimal. So which one you choose ends up being which one fits best with your values and capabilities of adhering to the treatment,
Hmm.
which then determines outcomes. The treatment effect does determine outcomes, but in other words, is the technical term, it becomes dispositive, which is a legal term for decisive or determining. So, in other
Hmm.
words, patient choice is what determines which treatment you get. Even
Hmm.
though the treatment has an effect, this is not mind over matter, but the patient choice. And we've actually shown research that this patient choice, the agency of patient choice, has a positive impact on outcomes. So, in other words, the more you know medical literacy, the better the decision you'll make, which means
Hmm.
the better the outcomes.
And it could be very big from a systematic point of
That's from a system point of view, we're talking quite big, yes.
wow. That
Yeah.
that will- that will- that will be another. I think we can do one episode on this
Well,
sometime.
that's why I said we can have another episode
That's a very big,
revolving.
because I haven't thought about like how can I mean, of course, we think about better outcome, right? We focus on that.
Yeah.
Haven't thought about how patient decisions can improve outcome for themselves,
Yep.
but
Yeah,
also
and
for the health system.
that's
Yeah,
right. And then when you multiply that out by millions, if not billions, that's huge.
it
And
could
what's
be.
interesting, what's even more fascinating is if you want to improve outcomes from treatment, which of course still is the bulk, and again, we can go over the details in a later time. So it's not like patient choice is some sort of mind over matter, and I'm going to influence and through my brain power. That's not what it is. It's about making the right choice that fits with what you can, you know, adhere in terms of treatment and the capability to do that. So, um, the interesting thing is that if you want to improve outcomes from a treatment perspective, how do you do that? You do research, you publish papers, you go through phase one, phase two, phase three trials. How long does it take? 10 years, right? If you want to improve outcomes from the point of view of the patient choice, making a better choice for them, we're not talking 10 years, we're talking at the time of decision. So a
Yeah.
medical literacy course, before the patient or as the patient is getting sick or whatever,
Mm.
it has the effect in the near term with immediate ROI,
Right.
not, 10 years from now. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that research. We shouldn't develop new drugs and new treatments and so forth. But that takes a long time, a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it. Let's say you're a patient and you have some serious disease,
Mm.
and somebody tells you, well, in 10 years, we might have a drug for that disease. Does that do you any good?
Not so
But
much.
what if somebody tells you, well, there are two treatments right now, which maybe are not the best ones,
Mm.
but if you can make a decision between the two that fit better with what you can support and fit better with your lifestyle, and by the way, a lot of these considerations intersect also with quality of life, obviously, you will have a better outcome. Maybe not as good as waiting 10 years and you'll be dead by then, right? So what's the point? But the point is, you can improve your outcomes now with better decisions.
I
So
mean,
that
this
I
could
think
be,
is a big.
yeah. I mean, this could be public health. I mean, we don't focus about prevention and things like that, but this kind of goes into the decision making, the behavior. Like,
That's
like,
right, right at the time. So that's why I distinguish it from health literacy. Medical literacy is different than health literacy. Health literacy is very important, but
mm,
it's the preventative knowledge and behaviors that will prevent you from getting sick many years later. Whereas medical literacy is the knowledge to allow you to recover better at the present time. It's quite different, but they're often confused.
let's dive into this in another episode. This could be like whole
Sure.
like maybe I'll
Yeah,
invite
and
another.
I can even share the research results.
Wow. Maybe I can even invite like another speaker to kind of make like a small panel and then kind of exchange ideas.
Yeah, of
That would be
course.
definitely very good. So we touched on the mini MD and then we went into the medical literacy. I want to also go into your experience now, in being in Dallas. How did they come about? And of course, we're going back to innovation. So what have you been seeing with your recent work in UT Dallas? Yeah, or Arlington. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually do some work with UT Dallas, but as you noted, they're different as UT Arlington.
Hmm.
So um, I was actually joined UT Arlington as part of a U.S. Department of Commerce grant, which
Hmm.
was a workforce development grant. And so this is actually quite important. It was a very large grant, $8-9 million. I don't know the details. I wasn't at that level administering it, but it was to develop the biotech, biomedical workforce in North Texas,
Hmm.
and specifically by providing training programs. And my job within that grant was to develop a bioinformatics, more specifically biohealth informatics course, which is now
Hmm.
available also. So I developed this course, and other parties to the grant developed other courses, and we graduated students, we got them jobs, upskilled, and they got raises, and these were the metrics and milestones that we had to achieve for the grant. And so in addition to that, that was a staff position, even though I was developed an online course. I also became on the faculty, and that's where I taught innovation. I taught the Essentials of Medicine course and did some research, for example, the one leading to the medical literacy that I described. So I've been involved in the teaching and research from the innovation side to the Essentials of Medicine to Bioinformatics. And the reason I tell you this long story with the Department of Commerce is there is a very concerted effort to build a biomedical hub in North Texas, particularly obviously around DFW. And this is one small component of that. So there are many initiatives from the Pegasus Park, which is a central biomedical lab and building that's all related to this, to the BioNTX umbrella organization that coordinates events, conferences, networking, panel discussions, and so forth across the area. There's a huge, I don't know how many million square feet, the former EDS headquarters, that was Ross Perot's company, is being converted into big lab space. That's going to come online very soon. So there's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of organizations, there's a lot of grant funding. There's also, thanks to my efforts, but obviously I'm a small part, there's increasing workforce capability in the DFW area. And then, of course, just from practical standpoint, there's infrastructure, there's central location, there's the airport, particularly around logistics and so forth. So it's becoming quite an attractive area, comparable to South San Francisco, San Diego, Boston, and the Research Triangle, North Carolina type of concept for a biomedical hub.
What got the North Texas to start looking at this? Like, what was the reason behind that?
That's a good question. I've only been here for 3-4 years, less than 4 years. So I don't know everything about it, although I've been pretty involved. But I don't know who was the driving force behind that. That's a good question. I'll look into that. You know, who made that decision? I know the people at the BioNTX, as I mentioned, the umbrella organization, and it'd be interesting. I'm always curious, and sometimes innovation is about somebody making a decision, and I'm not espousing a great man theory of history necessarily. Sometimes it's much more amorphous. So my point is, it'd be interesting to answer your question. I don't have an answer. I don't know exactly how that came about. And there may not even be an answer somehow, just serendipity and luck, whatnot.
Yeah.
But to be fair, there have been some I shouldn't be fair to try to answer your question, to speculate, as it were. A lot of these innovation hubs often have an anchor university. So we have Stanford in Silicon Valley area. We have MIT and Harvard in the Boston area. We have Duke in the North Carolina area. You went to Duke undergrad, right?
Did medical school, Duke and US in Singapore. Yeah.
Yes, Duke and US, and Baylor.
Yes, for residency.
For residency. Okay, yes. That's right. I knew there was Duke connected to you, but that was in Singapore, right? But Duke, obviously, the mother institution is in North Carolina. So we have UT Southwestern, with Nobel laureates, the whole cholesterol idea, and HMG-CoA reductase was developed by Brown and Goldstein at UT Southwestern, many other innovations. So I guess my point is, this wasn't just purely cattle country or oil production.
Of course.
There was something already, which may not have been consciously about the biomedical hub, but building on that. So certainly that's necessary, but not sufficient. And I think my hypothesis, some people recognize it as a leading medical center, which it is, and said, let's build something around it, and it goes from there. But I'll get back to that history. I think it's important. I would like to know. and I'll share with you next time.
That's another episode.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey, so I've been spending a lot of time in Singapore, Southeast Asian countries, and also Taiwan and Korea nowadays. Like I was
Hmm.
actually in JPM Taipei in February, last February, and of
Yeah,
course
yeah.
I was in Korea last January actually. So like back like these different places. Even now, right? Even now, when I go talk to or attend events, look at all these innovators or investors or startups. They're talking about eventually going to the US for commercialization, right? But then
Yeah.
they're still, or even R&D collaboration, but they're still looking at West Coast and Boston. I mean, these are like the two major centers in the US, right?
Yes, right.
But when I was in Houston, I think about 2 years ago, I remember. Of course, Houston's also different ecosystem from Dallas, but there was like a lot of medical, I guess, professionals, and the ecosystem are talking about, hey, we're trying to attract a lot of investors here, the companies, and also actually the Texas naturally has a cost advantage compared to these other places. So
Hmm.
I think I don't know if you see a lot of like international groups coming there already, and maybe some already. Uh, yeah, I mean, do you see some, I guess, movement in that? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, maybe we're coming at the end of the hour. We can follow up on that. But there's definitely, when I mentioned about BioNTX and building out, there's efforts to internationally engage, and I'd love to explore that. And it's not just U.S. companies coming into North Texas, but certainly global companies as well. So there's a lot of resources and interest. And sometimes it's better to enter an up and coming place than necessarily a fully established place where they say, well, you're just, new. We're already established. Who are you going to tell us? I mean, I'm not saying that Boston and South San Francisco are complacent places, but
Mhm.
having been a student of innovation and also at Samsung, in the sense it was a very successful company, but we were constantly drilled in by the senior leadership. Complacency kills, and sometimes it's the up and coming that is a wave that is better to ride than the already established. Again, I'm just painting a broad brush here, but that's something to consider.
Hey, thank you. So I think toward the end of the time, but I just want like one last question, and of course, this doesn't have to be long, but I mean, now that you're in Dallas, like what kind of like what trend do you see in terms of innovation? Like what are people what are people talking about? What specific things are they're like interested in terms of new technology or some trends? Yeah.
I think it's across the board. I wouldn't point out one particular. One thing I should say that I think is intriguing to me
Mm.
and may not be necessarily recognized as such, but to me, I think is intriguing. Again, I keep my eyes technology sensing on the future,
Mm.
is North Texas also has a very strong semiconductor base.
Mm.
So both in Austin as well as in the DFW area, Samsung has their research in Richardson, Texas, which is part of Dallas.
Mm.
Um, Texas Instruments, of course, which really originated the industry, is here. I
Yeah.
drive down the highway, I see their huge fabs, and I think Samsung is also building more fabs in the area, maybe others as well. My point, and of course, UTD is very famous for semiconductor, and that's why I said I interact with them. I've done some work in the area. Um, but I think that that is a special area. I wouldn't say that there's a lot of, and the reason I say this is there's the whole intersection of bioelectronics. You probably heard about the Neuralink and the electroceuticals. So I think this is a potentially, putting on my Samsung CTO hat, in 10 years, we might see more of this. And I think, to be frank, North Texas, given that serious semiconductor footprint, is better
Mhm.
positioned than South San Francisco. Boston has a little bit of semiconductor, but I think that was more in the past. Texas is a lot of semiconductor work, both research, support, and of course the industry. So I think the North Texas, that intersection you asked about, the innovation with bioelectronics, to put it broadly, which I've also taught, by the way, when I was in Korea, I developed a course on bioelectronics. Uh, I think that's very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I think I'll definitely want to, I guess, dive deeper on this. Definitely, I think for medical technologies with the neural links, I mean, that'll be something I think I see that could be like the next, I think, big,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more. I only mentioned that because a lot of people recognize it, but it's more than just that, of course.
I'm sure. Hey, so it was great to have you. So we're at the end of the time. So I just want
Yes,
to thank
thank
you
you.
again
Thank
for
you.
joining, and I also want to thank our audience. And definitely, we'd like to do another episode with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Park. Thanks, Jaemin. Bye.
Hey, thank you.